Thanks for having me. My name is Mark Walter. This presentation is going to be about tracking errors in Power BI. A little bit about me. I am originally from Honolulu, Hawaii. I spent a lot of my teenage and early adult in Redmond, Washington. And I currently live in Eugene, Oregon, where I work for Industrial Finishes. We are a wholesale distributor of industrial finished products for automotive, RV, aerospace, and then we also have an industrial like wood products division where we do packaging. So here's something that we would do. That's one of our cars, and we support paint and supply in body shops across the nation. We have in-house paint tech support in manufacturer plants such as Newmar and Forest River. We work with the government in painting and repainting airplanes. And like I said before, we do wood products. We don't do the wood, but we do all of the packaging, wide belt abrasives like you see there. And here's kind of our sales footprint. I've colored our automotive in green, so you can see that primarily for automotive we're on the west. We have a little bit in Indiana, and then we've got purple, which is representing our industrial business, our wood product business. Blue is our aerospace, and red is our RV. We were pretty early adopters of Power BI. I've got an accounting background, so I am the accounting manager here, and I've always been heavy into Excel and doing pivot tables and VLOOKUPs, and just felt that Power BI, when that came out, and Power Pivot was just right up my alley. So I took on pretty quickly to that, and my employer's been great about supporting me going out and meeting with customers in plants and in body shops and developing profit portals for them. I also work on doing internal financials, internal operating reports, internal to the business. So my role over the last five years is pretty much transitioned from working a lot in spreadsheets and sending them out to distributing analytics through Power BI.
And for those that may or may not remember, Mark actually presented at our user group. What was that? Was that last year? Was that in 2018? And it was all around, how to build, financial statements in Power BI, which is not an easy task.
Yeah. So I work in an interesting industry because we're not really tech forward, but we've got a lot of field reps. So there's a lot of insights that can be sent out from our headquarters, and things like financials and sales. It's been an interesting road to see how different people adopt analytics, and so I've found very quickly it's not as easy as just creating something in my office here and then sending it out and getting immediate adoption. So that's been quite a journey. And meeting Reza Rad, and I'm a fan of his Rookie to Rockstar books. I download them. I love that they're free, and I just think that Reza Rad has got some very practical advice when it comes to someone starting out in Power BI. So
he will be presenting in July, by the way, too. So we will have Reza at our user group.
Great. So I got a chance to go see his presentation in Seattle, and he did a presentation that was everything to do about catching errors in Power Query. And I just thought it was a neat technique. It was very practical, and it allowed the user to bring their errors, kind of unbury them from Power Query, and bring them to the forefront in a Power BI report. And I just thought that that was really neat. So this is what we're talking about. This is the load page that you get when you load your data model in Power BI desktop. And I'll admit I see this every day, where I load a table and it lists all the tables and it's successful, but I've always got a few errors, and I don't always run back to look at what caused those errors. So in today's presentation, I'm going to aim to create 3 tables out of a sales fact table. So we're going to break sales up into 3 tables, create 3 custom columns in Power Query, and then append my 3 tables together. And when I mean 3 tables, I don't mean all 3 sales tables. In my example, I've got a sales table, a part table, and a customer table. And then with 3 little edits made to our M code, we're going to create a reusable table function in Power Query that is going to be able to ingest all of our tables and spit out a master error table that we'll be able to report on. So with that, I'm going to switch my screen and do a demo. All right. You can see my Power Query screen. So we've got a very small example here, but we've got a customer table, we've got a sales table, and then we've got a parts table. And one of the things is when you're working in Power Query and you're working with a very large data set, you can't always see the errors right off of the bat. So when we look across here into this table here, and for some reason I don't have a slide bar, but you look up at the column quality up here and everything looks good. Everything's green. Everything's 100%. You go to other smaller tables and some of the errors are more obvious, and you've got that dreaded error there. And same with customer. So what I'm going to do is start out by referencing the sales table, and I'm going to make 2 references to it. And by referencing, I'm just mirroring the prior table, right? I'm carrying over those same steps or those prior steps rather than copying. So I'm going to reference it once, and then I'm going to reference it twice, and I'm going to rename one of the referenced copies or I'll call this the report. And then I'm going to rename the other one keep errors. And the purpose of making 2 references here is that we want the report version to stay clean and free from errors. So I'm just going to highlight this first column here, hit Control A to select all columns. And since this is going to be our clean version of our table, I'm going to just remove errors. And so this table is going to be free from errors. On the keep errors version, and this keep error version is eventually going to become our function. But I'm going to do the exact opposite, where I'm going to do Control A again to select all columns, and then I'm going to keep errors. So this is going to reduce this file down to just the error rows. And I'm going to rename the order ID column. I'm just going to call the order ID column key column. There's no real fancy reason why I'm doing that other than to just call that out easily as my key column. Okay. Now I'm going to open up the advanced editor and we're going to look at our code. And when thinking about this, what we're building is a function. So it needs to end up being reusable by multiple types of tables. So I want to use this in my customer table. I also want to use it in my part table. So this is not going to fly, right? So I need to come up with a replacement for these explicit column names that's going to work regardless of the table that I'm using through that function. So I'm going to use this function here called table column names and reference the source there. And if we were to do that on its own in its own table, what you'd end up with is just a column of column names. And so that will do right there as a replacement to all those text or those column names and quotes. So I'm going to click done right there. And so that's a good replacement for that step. And next, I am going to start creating custom columns. So the first custom column that we're going to create is going to be a record column. So we're going to add this column here, and we're going to call this current row. And this is a really long, difficult function, so make sure to pay attention. We're just doing an underscore there, right? And what that underscore does is it brings in every field in the record. And so we've got now this current row column, and if we look inside that record, we see that we have every column and value listed here. So we've got key column, ship date, customer number, all embedded in that single record. Now there's a difference here. If we expand this record into a table, we would end up exactly where we began. We would end up creating a mirror copy of all those columns out there. So we don't want to do that, right? So we're going to delete that step and come
Has
back
anybody
to
else heard of this underscore? Is that something new, or am I just totally oblivious? Using that underscore to pull the record.
It pulls all of the records into a cell.
That's pretty amazing.
I'm not an M master, but I think that underscore is a symbol that brings in each row record.
Good to know.
It's like an each symbol.
That's awesome.
So we've got all of this in here, and we saw that when we expanded that record in a table, we had just a repeat of where we started. And how I remember this is when I click into the cell there and I see these columns grayed out, I just imagine them as column headers. Okay. And so I know that if I expand that it's just going to spread out. So what we're going to do instead is make our second custom column. And what we're going to do is instead of expanding that record, this column is going to be called record to table. So instead of expanding the record in a table, we're going to convert the record to a table. So we're going to use the function record to table, and M is case sensitive, so be careful. And then I'm going to convert the record from our current row into a table. And now I've got another column. It represents a table. And I'm going to look in there and now see that column as an extension of my current table is gone. And now I've got two nice columns that stack the column names and each of the values. Now, some people might be thinking, why not just pivot or unpivot that information so you can get it into columns like that? And what I've learned from Reza's blog is that in order to unpivot or work with pivot, you have to have clean data. And it's not going to act very friendly when you have data where you're looking to report errors. So that table, depending on the error type, can literally stop your pivot cold, and you would end up with a partial table, right? So this method is the way that you would keep all valid values and retain errors as well. So we're going to open that up. We're going to see what we get. We're going to uncheck use original column. And that's exactly what we want. We want the value and we want the name. Now we're at the point where, since we're creating just an error table, we can get rid of all of the valid values, right? So this is the keep error table. So I'm going to go back here and keep the errors. So there's the errors. And I'm going to click in that record and see the dreaded error message down here in the light brown. It's not data, right? And half the time I look at an error like this and I don't know what it's telling me. I don't know where the error is, right? So my new beloved function is called try. And so we're going to add another column now. And this is our third custom column. And we're going to call this check errors. This is another long formula or long function. Try, right? I always think of Oz's. If you guys watch Oz's video, he's got a video and he says try or otherwise. And
the Excel Oz guy?
Oz, yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. He says try and otherwise, because try and then otherwise is a great way to address a single column with an error and cleanse that column before that data loads. So we're going to say try and then put the value in there. And then we get another record, right? So this is our third column. Let's look in this record. And it says has error, true, right? It's going to be true for every row in this table at this point. And then we've got the error, and that's a record, right? There's another error message, and there's more data underneath this record. So we're going to expand check errors, and we don't need to see has error. We know that that's true. And then we're going to click OK here. And now we're getting to the real error. So if we look inside this error opened up to more data details on what our error is. So we've got the reason, we've got the message, and we've got the detail of that error. Somebody put in don't know into the point of sale system. I'm going to open this up, and this time I'm going to click use original column name. I'm going to bring out every message there, and it's going to open up just like this. And we've got the reason, the error message, and our detail. Something I meant to say earlier that I did that's different than Reza Rad's technique is that I just added a column in each of my tables called table name, because I want to be able to create a master error table with all this information. And in addition to the column name that's right here, I thought it'd be nice to have table name as well, since at the end of this thing, we're going to be appending it all together. So now we're at the point where we've got repeated records over here because we've got maybe multiple errors in each row that are reporting further or reporting longwise. All I'm concerned about now is keeping the relevant reporting columns. So I'm going to keep the table name, of course, the name, the reason, error message, error detail, and we want the key column because that's our reference, that's our order number in the sales table. And let's see if there's anything else. There's not. And for this, we're just going to go up here and we're going to remove other columns. Again, a step that will be applicable for all types of tables that have a key column. So now we've got all of our detail here. That's the hard part. Now we're going to turn this into a function without parameters. I don't work with parameters that often, but from what I understand, it's not possible to create parameters that accept table names or whole tables. So this is a little bit different of a technique that's going to allow us to add a table as a parameter. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a function. And we're going to call the function check for errors. And there's our function. I'm going to open up the advanced editor again and see that there are two let expressions since this is a function. There's a let in the middle, which goes through our keep errors table that we just created, and a source up here with these parentheses that are going to allow us to put in our parameters. So up here in our parameters, we want to identify a variable as an input table, and then alias that as a table. And then the second one that we're going to identify is key column. That was our unique key, and we're going to identify that as a text. If we go through our M code at this point, we're looking for things that are going to make this not work well with other tables. And the first one is going to be that our source table in future tables like customer and parts is not going to be called fact sales original. So I can replace that with the variable input table that we just created. And that's going to allow us to identify our table and run it through as the source. The next one is going to be where we renamed our unique key to key column. And for that, I'm going to replace the step in the sales table where we had an order ID. I'm going to replace that with key column. And I did this a few times where I would put this in quotes, right? Because I thought that was a column or a valid column name. But it's important that you just reference that variable as it is. And we click done. We cross our fingers, and we've got a function with that accepts parameters. So we have that fact sales original that's not enabled to load, but we're going to run that original every refresh, even if it's coming from the service, right, through that original table, because that's the uncleansed version of our table. So I'm going to choose fact sales original, and then our key column from that one was order ID. we're going to invoke that function, and it reproduces our error table. I'm going to go ahead and rename this sales error. We're going to go back up to that function. We're going to run it through the customer table, dim customer, the unique column there is customer number. And we get one error there. I'm going to rename that customer errors. And then the last one is going to be the parts, dim parts. And the unique identifier there is SKU. We're going to call that parts errors. Now at this point, we have three identical tables run through our function that looked at every column and pulled out all of the details of our errors. I'm going to turn off the column quality. And now just simply append, right? Append 3 or more. And then we're going to add parts errors, and customer errors together. I'm going to rename this master error table. I'm going to disable load from the error tables that we don't need now. That's the fact sales original. That's our part table. Oh, sorry, that's fact sales report. We want that. We don't need that. That's inactive. And then we also don't need this table here as well. And I believe you might be able to delete that table at this point because we've turned that into our function, right? I'm going to close and load. Refresh. And it comes in with our table. And just like that, we can add our fields. We've got the table name all stacked up. We've got the name of the fields. We've got our unique identifier, so we can go back and look at orders. We've got our reason, error message, and what it was trying to convert. So we've got a bunch of zip codes there. Sometimes at our point of sale, at our counter, we'll have a walk-in customer that doesn't have an established account with us. So their shipping address or their location's not embedded in our system. And it gives them a chance to kind of freehand some key data like zip code, ship address. And sometimes we get cool things like, I don't know, like they literally just type don't know. Or they add in a zip code with a dash and letters behind it if it's from Canada. And then we've got for fun, we've got some invalid dates here. But anything that's not going along with the predetermined column type is going to get caught here. And what I especially like about this is you may not have errors when you build your data model and you publish your first report, but that doesn't mean the data won't change on future refreshes. So this is an opportunity if I'm at home or if I'm on my phone and I think that we have something missing from our data, we can go to a table like this, add visuals, add a card, maybe a bar chart that shows us where our errors are. And that is that.
Awesome. Let me see if I can get up.
I can't hear you.
Come on, can you hear me now?
There you go.
There it
Yep,
is. All right,
there you
Mark,
are.
that was amazing. First, let's give you some snaps because, you know, I think this technique is definitely one that everybody can learn from and can use. You had the chat on fire. So I'm going to kind of rewind a bit and ask a few questions that people had. Alex Powers had one. Alex, I don't know if you want to go off mute, if you want me to just read your question. I can do either.
Yeah, I can come off mute.
There we go.
Mark, this is incredible, man. Awesome.
Oh, thank you, Alex.
The question I had was I was almost curious if you could use hash sections to get all of your tables, and then if you're using the combination of table.add key and table.keys, you could dynamically do all of this.
Yeah, so I didn't think of the table method until about a day ago, but I had gone down that path where I was looking for something that would let me do it a little more elegantly than adding tables like that.
I mean, I'm smiling ear to ear. This is awesome. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, thank you.
Great. And then we had Greg Nash asking about the performance impact, you know, maybe max table size or how big can this go? And I think they're mostly calculated columns, right? Or
Right, and I mean, hopefully, what you're working down towards is a pretty small table. I've been using Power Query more recently in the last couple of years. And so I've been heavier into transformations and Power Query, and I know it can bog down the refresh. But I tried this on our GL table, and that table has 8 million records in it. I tried it in the sales record where we saw that there were 4 million, and it just worked through it pretty quickly. So it didn't seem to bog Power Query down.
it's great. Then we also had Bradley asking, can you go over the whole check for errors function again? Is that easy for you to go back to?
The whole check for errors? Oh,
Yeah.
the try part?
Was that it, Bradley? Feel free to jump off mute. Bradley, if you're there.
The check for errors.
Bradley, if you're there, feel free to run off mute. But yeah, it was that check for errors. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so
yes, that's it. Yeah, he wanted to see this advanced editor. Kind of hard to see if you could maybe kind of walk through that part of it.
yeah, so when you've got an error and you're trying to explore it in the error field, you don't really get data out of it, right? You get that light brown message that's not very helpful. That try will try to evaluate each of the records in that column against that data type, and it's just an opportunity for it to say you've got letters in a column that were identified as numeric. That try will try that alphanumeric field as a number, and when it fails, that try will give you the opportunity to either use otherwise in addition to try, and it's like replacing a field automatically in your data. It would be like going up and saying replace errors or replace values with 0 or blank. You can do that there. But other than that, what I know about try is it takes an error that's just of no value to us or no value to the table at that point, and it converts it and gives you the chance to pull out some data about what caused that error or what's behind that error. We used try, and it was a multi-layered record, and the first click in that record had, was it an error? True, right? And then the next one gave you a little definition that it was a record error. And then you expand on that record, and it doesn't go anywhere. It just kind of goes down a level into that record, and you find out that record has beneath it the actual details that you're looking for if you're trying to troubleshoot a record, or in our case, expand it into a table where we're going to bring it into Power BI and try to learn a little bit more about what caused that error.
Got it. Awesome. Thanks for walking through that. Hopefully, Bradley, that answered your question. I see a question, hand raised by Kirill. Kirill, you want to jump off mute?
Yeah, Mark, thank you so much. Great presentation. I'm going to go back to the comment that I made. So in your current process, how do you take it back to the business users or the systems that they're using? Or have you thought about kind of at the very least automating the step of sending it back to wherever it came from, the errors, the source of errors, wherever that is?
Yeah. So as far as our business users go, they probably have very little interest or in looking at errors in a separate tab. It would be more for a developer like myself or people that we contract to do our ERP. I'm occasionally looking at errors that were caused by our ERP, and it's something that I could quickly show them. When it comes to errors in our ERP, sometimes it's an invalid character that sneaks in, or it parses a row incorrectly and just grinds that dashboard to a halt. Something like this available in a tab would save me some good time trying to chase that error down. They don't use Power BI. There's a little separation there where I don't publish to them, but I can definitely take a screenshot. The other type of errors that I'm interested in and we run into happen at our point of sale. We don't have a bulletproof ERP, and we don't we're not free from errors from people at the counter that are ringing up orders. And so there's definitely a learning opportunity there for us where we can identify like those zip codes that have letters in it. And I would either take it to the counter and let them know, or I'd go back to our ERP people and ask them to kind of protect that field or put some safeguards around it.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Awesome. Anybody else have questions for Mark? Maybe Mark, while we wait, do you want to do some self-promotion about your relatively new blog? I don't know if you mentioned it or if you want to drop the link about your blog in the chat, but okay. I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah. Well, I've been a business Excel user for quite some time. And as I mentioned, I picked up Power BI. It was a great experience for me to learn some more technical skills and some soft skills in Power BI adoption. I see a lot of stuff out there addressing the technical side of Power BI. I've spent a lot of time out in the field with body shop customers, manufacturers, internal sales reps, and kind of learning the softer side of Power BI adoption. And I love the product. I use it every single day. It ultimately wins for us when it's used out in the field and people can connect and relate to their data. So I started a blog called Story BI. I initially started it as kind of a repository for some resources and stuff. Alex was very gracious enough to share with me a list of resources that he posted on his LinkedIn. I think still to this day, that's my most popular post, is this laundry list of learning resources for Power BI. So I'd encourage
awesome.
anyone new to go check that out. But my blog is storybi.com, and I'm just getting my feet wet there. but it's a little bit of DAX, it's a little bit of analytics, and it's a little bit of storytelling and data.
That's awesome,
Thank you.
Mark. I'm really stoked to see that you're really helping reinvest a lot into the community and through your blog. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
We did get another question on, if you're looking for more help on, error tables or, topics of, creating like sophisticated QA systems, is there, specific terms or things you should look for? Is there like specific terminology in Power BI somebody can look into?
I don't use Q&A that much.
Oh, I say
And I know
QA, like
like
quality.
quality assurance.
Yeah.
Looking for terms in the errors.
Silke, I don't know if you're able to jump off mute and maybe kind of elaborate.
I'm totally able. Thank you,
There you
so Mark. This is pretty amazing. I am going to face exactly what you were just showing with a lot of where now erroneous data coming into my Power BI thing. And so aside from having this meeting now recorded and going back to what you were just going through, if I'm looking for online help on this, what are the exact terms? This is data QI, right? It's a really sophisticated data QA system.
Okay.
Where you're shooting back at your whoever data entry people, this needs to be corrected. So this is amazing.
Good. I'm glad. As for finding this out on the web, you can go to Reza Rad website and you type in his name in Google, and the keywords were error handling, and those 3 words in Google will take you to a 3-part blog where he walks through this code. Again, amazing guy, right? Very practical and functional learning resources there.
And Greg put Reza Rad's link to that blog post in the chat. And again, Reza will be presenting at our July user group. So really excited to have him. I think Reza does a lot of great work in his, basically step-by-step tutorials for some really important Power BI topics.
Yeah, it's radicad.com.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take you directly there.